I didn't think it polite to listen, madam.
Well, I'm sorry for that, for your sake. I don't play accurately. Anyone can play accurately, but I play with wonderful expression. When it comes to the piano, sentiment is my forte. I keep science for life.
Yes, madam.
And speaking of the science of life, have you got the cucumber sandwiches cut for Lady Bracknell?
Yes, madam.
By the way, Lane, I see from your book that on Thursday, when Lord Shorman and Mr. Worthing dined with me, 8 bottles of champagne are entered as having been consumed?
Yes, madam. 8 bottles and a pint.
Why is it that at a spinster's establishment, the servants invariably drink the champagne? I ask merely for information.
I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine, madam. I find that in married households, champagne is rarely of a first-rate brand.
Good heavens. Is marriage so demoralizing as that?
I believe it is a very pleasant state. I have had very little experience of it to myself up to the present. I have only been married once. That was in consequence of a misunderstanding between myself and a young person.
I don't know that I'm much interested in your family life, Lane.
No, madam, it is not a very interesting subject. I never think of it myself.
Very natural, I'm sure. Thank you, Lane. That will do.
Thank you, madam.
Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. Honestly, if the lower orders don't set us a good example, what on earth is the use of them? They seem as a class to have absolutely no sense of moral responsibility.
Mr. Ernest Worthing.
How are you, dear Ernest? What brings you up to town?
Oh, pleasure, pleasure. What else should bring one anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, Algie.
I believe it is customary in polite society to take some slight refreshment at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since Thursday?
In the country.
What on earth do you do there?
When one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It's excessively boring.
Whom do you amuse?
Oh, neighbors.
Got nice neighbors in Europe on Shropshire?
Oh, perfectly horrid. Never speak to one of them.
How immensely you must amuse them. By the way, Shropshire is your county, is it not?
Shropshire? Yes, of course. Hello. Why all these cups? Why cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance in one so young? Who's coming to tea?
Oh, merely Aunt Augusta and Gwendolyn.
How perfectly delightful.
Yes, that's all very well. But I don't think Aunt Augusta will quite approve of your being here.
May I ask why?
My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolyn is perfectly shameful. It's almost as bad as the way Gwendolyn flirts with you.
I am in love with Gwendolyn. I came to town expressly to propose to her.
I thought you came for pleasure. I call that business.
How utterly unromantic you are.
I really see nothing romantic in proposing. It is very romantic to be in love. There's nothing whatsoever romantic about a definite proposal. Why, one may be accepted. One usually is, I believe. Oh, then all the excitement is over. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. If I ever get married, I'll certainly try to forget the fact.
Oh, I have no doubts about that, dear Algie. The divorce courts were specifically invented for people whose memories are so curiously constituted.
Well, there's no use speculating on that front, dear fellow. Divorces are made, and please don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. They are ordered specially for Aunt Augusta.
Well, you've been eating them all this time.
Well, that's quite a different matter. She's my aunt. Have some bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn is devoted to bread and butter.
Very good bread and butter it is, too.
My dear fellow, you need not eat as if you were going to eat it all. You behave as if you were married to her already. You are not married to her already, and I don't think that you ever will be.
Why on earth do you say that?
Well, in the first place, girls never marry the men they flirt with. We don't think it's right.
Oh, that's nonsense.
It isn't. It accounts for for the extraordinary number of bachelors one sees all over the place. In the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
My dear fellow, Gwendolyn is my first cousin. And before I allow you to marry her, you are going to have to clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? What on earth do you mean? What do you mean, Algie, by Cecily? I don't know anyone by the name of Cecily.
Bring me that cigarette case Mr. Worthing left in the smoking room last time he dined here.
Yes, madam.
Do you mean to say you've had my cigarette case all this time? I wish to goodness you would let me know. I've been writing frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. I was very nearly offering a large reward.
I wish you would offer one. I happen to be more than usually hard up.
Well, there's no use offering a reward now that the thing is found. Ah.
I think that is rather mean of you, Ernest, I must say. Oh, but it makes no matter, for now that I read the inscription inside, I find that the thing isn't yours after all.
Of course it's mine. You've seen me with it 100 times, and you have no right to read what's written on the inside. It's a very uncouth thing to read a private cigarette case.
Oh, it is absurd to have a hard and fast rule about what one should and shouldn't read. More than half of modern culture depends upon what one shouldn't read.
I'm quite aware of the fact, and I don't propose to discuss modern culture. It's not the sort of thing one talks of in private. I simply want my cigarette case back.
Yes, but this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case is a present from someone of the name of Cecily, and you said you didn't know anyone of that name.
Well, if you want to know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt?
Yes, charming old lady she is. Lives out in Tunbridge Wells. Just give it back to me, Algie.
But why? Does she call herself Little Cecily if she is your aunt and lives at Tunbridge Wells? From Widow Cecily with her fondest love.
My dear friend, what on earth is there to that? Some aunts are tall, some aunts are not tall. That should be a matter an aunt should decide for herself. You seem to think that every aunt should be exactly like your aunt, which is absurd. For heaven's sakes, just give me back my cigarette case.
But why would your aunt call you her dear uncle? From Widow Cecily with her fondest love to her dear Uncle Jack. There is no objection, I admit, to an aunt being a small aunt. But why an aunt, no matter what her size may be, should call her own nephew her uncle, I can't quite make out. Besides, your name isn't Jack anyway, it's Ernest.
It isn't Ernest, it's Jack.
You have always told me it was Ernest. I have introduced you to everyone as Ernest. You answer to the name of Ernest. You look as if your name were Earnest. You are the most earnest-looking person I ever saw in my life. Perfectly absurd you're saying your name isn't Ernest. It's on your cards. Ernest Worthing, B for the Albany West. I'll keep this if ever you deny your name is Ernest to me or to Gwendolyn or to anyone else.
My name is Ernest in town and Jack in the country. The cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes, but that does not account for the fact that your small Aunt Cecily, who lives at Tunbridge Wells, calls you her dear uncle. Come on, old boy. You'd much better have the thing out at once.
My dear friend, you talk exactly as though you were a dentist. It's a very vulgar thing to talk like a dentist when one isn't a dentist. It produces a false impression.
Well, that is exactly what dentists always do. Now go on, tell me the whole thing. I may mention, I have long suspected you of being a confirmed and secret Bunburyist, and now I'm quite sure of it.
Bunburyist? What on earth do you mean, Bunburyist?
I'll explain to you the meaning of that incomparable expression once you are so good as to tell me why you are Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Well, produce my cigarette case first.
Here. Now produce your explanation. Pray make it improbable.
My dear friend, there's nothing improbable about my explanation at all. In fact, it's perfectly ordinary. Old Thomas Cardew, who adopted me as a little boy, placed me in his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who addresses me as uncle, in motives of respect you cannot possibly appreciate, lives at my house in the country under the charge of her esteemed governess, Miss Prism.
Where is this house in the country, by the way?
That is nothing to you, my friend. You're not going to be invited. I'll tell you candidly, the place is not in Shropshire.
I suspected that, dear fellow. I bunburyed all over Shropshire on 2 separate occasions. Now go on. Why are you Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear Algie, I don't know if you'll be able to understand my real motives. You're hardly serious enough. When one is placed in the position of guardian, one must adopt a very high moral tone on all subjects. It's one's duty to do so. And as a high moral tone can hardly conduce very much to one's own health or happiness, in order to get to town, I've always pretended to have a younger sibling by the name of Earnest, who lives in Albany and gets into the most dreadful scrapes. That, my dear Algie, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
Oh, the truth is rarely pure and never simple. Modern life would be very tedious if it were either. Modern literature, a complete impossibility.
That wouldn't at all be a bad thing.
Oh, literary criticism is not your forte, dear fellow. Don't try it. You should save that for people who haven't been at a university. They do it so well in the daily papers. What you really are is a Bunburyist. I was quite right in saying you're a Bunburyist. You're one of the most advanced Bunburyists I know.
What on earth do you mean?
You have invented a very useful younger sibling called Earnest. I have invented an invaluable permanent invalid called Bunbury. Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. If it weren't for Bunbury's extraordinary bad health, I wouldn't be available to dine with you at Willis's tonight, for I've really been engaged to Aunt Augusta for more than a week.
I haven't invited you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
I know, you're absurdly careless about sending out invitations. It's quite foolish of you. Nothing annoys people so much as not receiving invitations.
You would much better dine with your Aunt Augusta.
Oh, I haven't the slightest intention of doing anything of the kind. To begin with, I dine there on Monday, and once a week is quite enough to dine with one's own relations. In the second place, whenever I do dine there, I'm always treated as a member of the family and sent down with either no woman at all or 2. In the third place, I know exactly who she will seat me next to. She'll place me next to Mary Farquhar, who always flirts with her own husband across the dinner table. That sort of thing is not very pleasant. Indeed, it's not even decent. And that sort of thing is enormously on the increase. I mean, the amount of women in London who flirt with their own husbands is perfectly scandalous. I mean, it looks so bad. It is simply washing one's clean linen in public. Besides, now that I know you to be a confirmed Bunburyist, I naturally want to talk to you about Bunburying. I want to tell you the rules.
I am not a Bunburyist at all. If Gwendolyn accepts me, I'm going to kill my sibling. Indeed, I think I'll kill them in any case. Cecily is a little too much interested in them. It's rather a bore. So, I'm going to get rid of Earnest, and I strongly advise you to do the same with with your invalid friend who has the absurd name.
Nothing would induce me to part with Bunbury. And if you intend to marry, which seems to me extremely problematic, you will be very glad to know Bunbury. Someone who marries without knowing Bunbury is a very tedious time of it.
Oh, that's nonsense. If I marry a charming girl like Gwendolyn, and indeed she is the only girl I ever saw that I would marry, I certainly won't want to know Bunbury.
Then your wife will. You don't seem to realize, old fellow, that in married life, 3 is company and 2 is none.
That, my dear young friend, is the theory that the corrupt French drama has been propounding for the last 50 years.
Yes, and that the happy English home has proved in half the time.
My, come on, don't be cynical. It's perfectly easy to be cynical.
Oh, my dear fellow, it isn't easy to be anything nowadays. There's such a lot of beastly competition about. That'll be Aunt Augusta. Only relatives and creditors ever ring in that Wagnerian manner. Now, if I get her out of the way for 10 minutes, so that you can have the opportunity of proposing to Gwendolyn, may I dine with you at Willis's tonight?
I suppose so, if you want to.
Yes, but you must be serious. I hate people who are not serious about meals. It is so shallow of them.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, dear Algernon. I hope you're behaving very well.
I'm feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
That's not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Dear me, you are smart.
I am always smart. Aren't I, Mr. Worthing?
You are quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, I hope I am not that. It would leave no room for developments. And I intend to develop in many directions.
I'm sorry if we are a little late, Algernon, but I was obliged to call on dear Lady Harbury. I hadn't been there since her poor husband's death. I never saw a woman so altered. She looks quite 20 years younger. And now have a cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta.
Won't you come and sit here, Gwendolyn?
Thanks, Mama. I'm quite comfortable where I am.
Good heavens, Lane! Where are the cucumber sandwiches? I ordered them specially.
There were no There were no cucumbers in the market this morning, madam. I went down twice. No, madam. Not even for ready money.
Thank you, Lane. You may go.
Thank you, madam.
I am greatly distressed, Aunt Augusta, about there being no cucumbers, not even for ready money.
It really makes no matter, Algernon. I had some crumpets with Lady Harbury, who seems to me to be living entirely for pleasure now.
I hear her hair has turned quite gold from grief.
It certainly has changed color. From what cause I, of course, cannot say. Thank you. I've quite a treat for you tonight, Algernon. I'm going to send you down with Mary Farquhar. She's such a nice woman and so attentive to her husband. It's delightful to watch them.
I am afraid I shall have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight after all.
I hope not, Algernon. It would put my table completely out. Your uncle would have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he is accustomed to that.
It is a great bore, and I need hardly say a terrible disappointment to me. But the fact is, I have just received a telegram that my poor friend Bunbury is very ill again. They seem to think I should be with him.
It's very strange. This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes, poor Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, I must say, Algernon, I think it is high time that Mr. Bunbury decided whether he was going to live or die. This shilly-shallying with the question is absurd. Nor do I in any way approve of the modern sympathy with invalids. I consider it morbid. Illness of any kind is hardly a thing to be encouraged in others. Health is the primary duty of life. I am always telling that to your poor uncle, but he never seems to take much notice, as far as any improvement in his ailments goes. I should be much obliged, Algernon, if you would ask Mr. Bunbury, from me, to be kind enough not to have a relapse on Saturday, for I rely on you to arrange my music for me. It is my last reception, and one wants something that encourages conversation. Particularly at the end of the season, when everybody has practically said whatever it was they had to say, which in most cases was probably not much.
I'll speak to Bunbury, Aunt Augusta, if he is still conscious. And I think I can promise you he'll be all right by Saturday. Of course, the music is a great difficulty. You see, if one plays good music, people don't listen. And if one plays bad music, people don't talk. But I'll go over the program I've drawn up if you will kindly step into the other room with me.
Thank you, Algernon. It is very thoughtful of you. I'm sure the program will be delightful. After a few expurgations. French songs I cannot possibly allow. People always seem to think that they are improper and then either look shocked, which is vulgar, or laugh, which is worse. But German sounds a thoroughly respectable language, and indeed I believe is so. Gwendolyn, you will accompany me.
Certainly, Mamma.
Charming day it has been, Miss Fairfax.
Pray don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I always feel quite certain they mean something else. And that makes me so nervous.
I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I am never wrong.
And I'd like to be allowed to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
I would certainly advise you to do so. Mamma has a way of coming back suddenly into a room that I've often had to speak to her about.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I met you, I've admired you. More than any girl that I've met since I met you.
Yes, I'm quite aware of the fact, and I often wish that in public, at any rate, you had been more demonstrative. For me, you have always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. The fact is constantly mentioned in the more expensive monthly magazines and has reached the provincial pulpits, I am told. And my ideal has always been to love someone of the name of Earnest. There is something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. The moment Algernon first mentioned to me that she had a friend called Earnest, I knew I was destined to love you.
You really love me, Gwendolyn?
Passionately.
Oh, darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
My own Earnest.
But you don't mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Earnest.
But your name is Earnest.
Yes. I know. It is. But supposing it was something else, do you mean to say you couldn't love me then?
Ah, that is clearly a metaphysical speculation. And like most metaphysical speculations, it has very little reference at all to the actual facts of real life as we know them.
Well, really, Gwendolyn, to speak quite frankly, I don't very much care about the name of Earnest. I don't think the name suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly. It is a divine name. It has a music of its own. It produces vibrations.
Oh, well, really, darling, I think there are lots of other much nicer names. I think Jack, for instance, a charming name.
Jack. No. There's very little music in the name Jack, if any at all, indeed. It does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibrations. I have known several Jacks, and they all, without exception, were more than usually plain. And besides, Jack is a notorious domesticity for John, and I pity any woman who is married to a man called John. She would probably never be allowed to know the entrancing pleasure of a single moment's solitude. The only really safe name is Earnest.
Gwendolyn, I must get christened at once. I mean, we must get married at once. There's no time to be lost.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Well, surely. You know that I love you, and you've led me to believe you're not absolutely indifferent to me.
I adore you. But you haven't proposed to me yet. Nothing has been said at all about marriage. The subject has not even been touched on.
Well, may I propose to you now?
I certainly think it would be an admirable opportunity. And, to spare you any possible disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I think it only fair to mention quite frankly in advance that I am fully determined to accept you.
Gwendolyn!
Yes, Mr. Worthing? What have you got to say to me?
You know what I've got to say to you.
Yes, but you don't say it.
Oh, yeah. Gwendolyn, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling. How long you have been about it. I'm afraid you have had very little experience in how to propose.
My own one, I've never loved anyone in the world but you.
Yes, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does. All my girlfriends tell me so. What wonderfully blue eyes you have, Ernest. They are quite blue. I hope you will always look at me just like that, especially when there are other people present.
Mr. Worthy! Rise, sir, from this semi-recumbent posture. It is most indecorous.
Mama! I must beg you to retire. This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing has not quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
I am engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mama.
Pardon me, you are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged to someone, I, or your father, should his health permit him, will inform you of the fact. An engagement should come on a young girl as a surprise. Pleasant or unpleasant, as the case may be. It is hardly a matter that she could be allowed to arrange for herself. And now I have a few questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. While I'm making my inquiries, you, Gwendolyn, will wait for me below in the carriage.
Mama!
In the carriage, Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn! The carriage!
Yes, Mama.
You can take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell. I prefer standing.
I feel bound to tell you that you are not down on my list of eligible young men, although I have the same list as the dear Duchess of Bolton has. We work together, in fact. However, I am quite ready to enter your name, should your answers be what a really affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes, I must admit I smoke.
I'm glad to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many idle men in London as it is. How old are you?
29.
Very good age to be married at. I have always been of the opinion that a man who desires to get married should either know everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
I'm pleased to hear it. I do not approve of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate exotic fruit. Touch it and the bloom is gone. The whole theory of modern education is radically unsound. Fortunately, in England at any rate, education produces no effect whatsoever. If it did, it would prove a serious danger to the upper classes and would probably lead to acts of violence in Grosvenor Square. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or in investments?
In investments, chiefly.
That is satisfactory. What between the duties expected of one during one's lifetime and the duties exacted from one after one's death, land has ceased to be either a profit or a pleasure. It gives one position, but prevents one from keeping it up. That's all that can be said about land.
I own a house in the country, with some land, of course, attached to it. About 1,500 acres, I believe. Of course, I don't depend on that for my real income. In fact, as far as I can make out, the poachers are the only ones who make anything out of it.
A country house? How many bedrooms? Well, that point can be cleared up afterwards. You have a townhouse, I hope. A girl with a simple, unspoiled nature like Gwendolyn could hardly be expected to reside in the country.
I own a house in Belgrave Square, but it's let out by the year to a Lady Bloxham. Of course, I can get it back whenever I like, at 6 months' notice.
Lady Bloxham? I don't know her.
She goes about very little. She's a lady considerably advanced in years.
Nowadays that is no guarantee of respectability of character. What number in Belgrave Square?
149.
The unfashionable side. I thought there was something. However, that could easily be altered.
Do you mean the fashion or the side?
Both, if necessary, I presume. What are your politics?
No, I'm afraid I really have none. I'm a liberal unionist.
Oh, they count as Tories. They dine with us, or come in the evening at any rate. Now to minor matters. Are your parents living?
I have lost both my parents.
Both. one parent, Mr. Worthing, may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father? He was evidently a man of some wealth. Was he born into what the radical papers call the purple of commerce, or did he rise from the ranks of the aristocracy?
I'm afraid I really don't know. The fact is, I said I had lost both my parents. It would be nearer to the truth to say that my parents seem to have lost me. I don't actually know who I am at birth. I was found.
Found?
The late Mr. Thomas Cardew, an older gentleman of very kindly and charitable disposition, found me and gave me the name of Worthing, because he had a first-class ticket to Worthing in his pocket at the time. Worthing is a place in Sussex. It's a seaside resort.
Where did this charitable gentleman who had the first-class ticket to the seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, Lady Bracknell, I was found in a handbag. A somewhat large, black leather handbag with handles attached to it. An ordinary handbag, in fact.
In what locality did this Mr. James or George or Thomas Cardew come across this ordinary handbag?
At the cloakroom at Victoria Station. It was given to him by mistake for his own.
The cloakroom at Victoria Station?
Yes, the Brighton line.
The line is immaterial. Mr. Worthing, I confess I am somewhat bewildered by what you have just told me. To be born, or at any rate bred, in a handbag, whether it had handles or not, seems to me to display a contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life, which reminds one of the worst excesses of the French Revolution. And I presume you know what that unfortunate movement led to? As for the particular locality in which the handbag was found, a cloakroom at a railway station might serve to conceal a social indiscretion. Has probably indeed been used for that purpose before now. But it could hardly be regarded as an assured basis of a recognized position in good society.
May I ask what you would advise me to do? I need hardly say I would do anything in the world to ensure Gwendolyn's happiness.
I would strongly advise you, Mr. Worthing, to try and acquire some relations as soon as possible, and to make a definite effort to produce at any rate one parent of either sex before the season is quite over.
Well, I don't see how I could possibly manage to do that. I can produce the handbag at any moment. It's in my dressing room at home. I really think that should satisfy you, Lady Bracknell.
Me, sir? What has it to do with me? You could hardly imagine that I and Lord Bracknell would dream of allowing our only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a parcel? Good morning, Mr. Worthing.
Good morning. For heaven's sake, don't play that ghastly tune, Algie. How idiotic you are.
Didn't it go off all right, old boy? Oh, you don't mean to say Gwendolyn refused you? I know it is a way she has. She is always refusing people. I think it is most ill-natured of her.
Oh, Gwendolyn is as right as a trivet. As far as she's concerned, we're engaged. Her mother is perfectly unbearable. I've never met such a gorgon. I don't really know what a gorgon is like, but I'm quite sure that Lady Bracknell is one. In any case, she's a monster without being myth, which is quite unfair to... I beg your pardon, Algie. I suppose I shouldn't talk about your own aunt in that way before you.
My dear fellow, I love hearing my relations abused. It is the only thing that makes me put up with them at all. Relations are simply a tedious pack of people who haven't got the slightest knowledge of how to live nor the faintest instinct of when to die.
Oh, that's nonsense.
It isn't.
Well, I'm not going to argue about the matter. You always want to argue about things.
That is precisely what things were originally made for.
Upon my word, if that were true, I'd shoot myself. You don't think that Gwendolyn has any chance of becoming like her mother in 150 years, do you?
All women become like our mothers. That is our tragedy. No man does. That's his.
Is that clever?
It is perfectly phrased. And quite as true as any observation of civilized life can be.
I am sick to death of cleverness. Everyone's clever nowadays. You can't go anywhere without meeting clever people. It's become an absolute public nuisance. I wish to goodness we had a few fools left. I would very much like to meet them. What do they talk about?
The fools? All about the clever people, of course.
What fools?
By the way, did you tell Gwendolyn the truth about your being Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear friend, the truth isn't something you say to a nice, sweet, refined girl. What extraordinary ideas you have on how to behave to women.
The only way to behave to a woman is to make love to her if she is pretty. And to someone else. And to someone else if she is plain.
Oh, that's nonsense.
Well, what about your sibling? What about the profligate Earnest?
No, I shall have gotten rid of them before the end of the week. I'll say they died suddenly in Paris of apoplexy. People die quite suddenly of apoplexy, don't they?
Yes, but it's hereditary, my dear fellow. It's the sort of thing that runs in families. You'd much better say a severe chill.
And you're quite sure a severe chill isn't hereditary or anything of the sort?
Of course not.
Very well. My poor sibling Ernest is carried off suddenly in Paris by a severe chill. That gets rid of him.
But I thought you said that Miss Cardew was a little too much interested in your poor sibling Ernest. Won't she feel their loss a good deal?
Oh, that's all right. Cecily isn't a silly romantic girl, I'm glad to say. She's got a capital appetite, goes on long walks, and pays no attention at all to her lessons.
I should rather like to meet Cecily.
I shall take very good care you never do. She's excessively pretty and only just 18.
Have you told Gwendolyn you have an excessively pretty ward who is only just 18?
Oh, one doesn't blurt these things out to people. Cecily and Gwendolyn are perfectly certain to be extremely good friends. I'll bet you anything you like that within a half hour after they've met, they'll be calling each other sister.
Women only do that when we've called each other a lot of other things first. Oh, now if we're going to get a table, dear fellow, we really must go and dress. Did you know it's nearly 7?
Oh, it's always nearly 7.
Well, I'm hungry.
I've never known you when you weren't.
Well, what on earth should we do? Go to the theater?
Oh no, I loathe listening.
Well, let us go to the club.
Oh no, I can't stand talking to people.
We could trot around the Empire at 10.
Oh no, I hate looking at things. It's all so silly.
What on earth should we do?
Nothing.
It is very hard work doing nothing. However, I don't mind hard work, so long as there is no definite object of any kind.
Miss Fairfax?
Gwendolyn, upon my word.
Algie, kindly turn your back. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
Really, Gwendolyn, I don't think I can allow this.
Algie, you always have a strictly immoral attitude towards life. You are not quite old enough to do that.
Darling!
Ernest, we may never be married. From the expression on Mamma's face, I fear we never shall. Few parents pay any regard to what their children tell them nowadays. And the old-fashioned respect for the young is fast dying out. Whatever influence I ever had over Mamma, I lost at the age of 3. But although she may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and I may marry someone else, and marry often, nothing she can possibly do can alter my eternal devotion to you.
Dear Gwendolyn.
The story of your romantic origin, as related to me by Mamma with unpleasing comments, has naturally stirred the deeper fibers of my nature. Your Christian name has an irresistible fascination. The simplicity of your character makes you exquisitely incomprehensible to me. Your town address at the Albany I have. What is your address in the country?
The Manor House, Woolton, Hertfordshire.
There is a good postal service, I suppose. It may be necessary to do something desperate. And that, of course, will require serious consideration. I will communicate with you daily.
My own one.
How long do you remain in town?
Till Monday.
Good. Algie, you may turn round now.
Thanks, I've turned around already.
You may also ring the bell.
You will let me see you to your carriage, my darling?
Certainly.
I will see Miss Fairfax out.
Yes, sir.
Oh. Bills. Glass of sherry, Lane.
Yes, madam.
Tomorrow, Lane, I'm going Bunburying.
Yes, madam.
I expect I'll be away till Monday. You can put up my smoking jacket, my dress clothes, all the Bunbury suits.
Yes, madam.
I hope tomorrow will be a fine day, Lane.
It never is, madam.
Lane. You're a perfect pessimist.
I do my best to give satisfaction, madam.
There is a sensible, intellectual girl, the only girl I've ever cared for in my... What are you so amused at?
Oh, I'm just a little worried about my poor friend Bunbury, that's all.
If you don't take care, your poor friend Bunbury will get you into a serious scrape one day.
I love scrapes. They're the only things that are never serious.
That's nonsense. You never talk anything but nonsense.
Nobody ever does.
Cecily? Cecily. Surely such an urbane occupation as the watering of flowers is rather Moulton's duty than yours, especially when intellectual pleasures await you. Your German grammar is on the table. Pray open it at page 15. We will repeat yesterday's lesson.
But I don't like German. It isn't at all a becoming language. I know perfectly well I look quite plain after my German lesson.
Child, you know how anxious your guardian is that you should improve yourself in every way. He laid particular stress on your German as he was leaving for town yesterday. Indeed, he always lays stress on your German when he is leaving town.
Dear Uncle Jack is so very serious. Sometimes he is so serious, I think he cannot be quite well.
Your guardian enjoys the best of health, and his gravity of demeanor is especially to be commended in one so comparatively young as he is. I know no one with a higher sense of duty and responsibility.
I suppose that is why he often looks a little bored when we three are together.
Cecily, I am surprised at you. Mr. Worthing has many troubles in his life. Idle merriment and triviality would be out of place in his conversation. You must remember his constant anxiety about that unfortunate, his sibling.
I wish Uncle Jack would allow that unfortunate, his sibling, to come down here sometimes. We might have a good influence over them, Miss Prism. You certainly would. You know German and geography and things of that kind influence a person very much.
I do not think that even I could effect any change in a character that by their own brother's admission is irretrievably weak and vacillating. Indeed, I am not sure I would desire to reclaim them. I am not in favor of this modern mania for changing bad people into good people. As a man sows, so let him reap. You must put away your diary, Cecily. I really don't see why you should keep a diary at all.
I keep a diary in order to enter the wonderful secrets of my life. If I didn't write them down, I should probably forget all about them.
Memory, my dear Cecily, is the diary that we all carry about with us.
Yes, but it usually chronicles things that have never happened and couldn't possibly have happened. I believe that memory is responsible for nearly all the 3-volume novels that Moody sends us.
Oh, do Do not speak slightingly of the 3-volume novel, Cecily. I wrote one myself in earlier days.
Did you really, Miss Prism? How wonderfully clever you are. I hope it did not end happily. I don't like novels that end happily.
Well, the good ended happily, and the bad unhappily. That is what fiction means.
I suppose so. But it seems rather unfair. And was your novel ever published?
Oh, alas, no. The manuscript, unfortunately, was abandoned. I use the word in the sense of lost or mislaid. Oh, to your work, child. These speculations are profitless.
But I see dear Dr. Chasuble coming up through the garden.
Dr. Chasuble, this is indeed a pleasure.
And how are we this morning? Miss Prism, you are, I trust, well?
Miss Prism has just been complaining to me of a slight headache. I think it would do her so much good to go on a short stroll with you in the park, Dr. Chasuble.
Cecily, I have not mentioned anything about a headache.
No, Miss Prism, I know that, but I felt instinctively that you had a headache. Indeed, I was thinking about that and not about my German when the rector came in.
I hope, Cecily, you're not being inattentive.
Oh, I'm afraid I am.
That is strange. Were I fortunate enough to be Miss Prism's pupil, I would hang upon her lips. I spoke metaphorically. My metaphor was drawn from bees.
Okay.
Mr. Worthing, I suppose, has not come from town yet?
We do not look for him until Monday afternoon.
Yes, he usually likes to spend his Sunday in London. He's not one of those whose sole aim is enjoyment, as, by all accounts, that unfortunate young person, his sibling, seems to be. But I must not disturb Egeria and her pupil any longer.
Egeria? My name is Letizia, Doctor.
A classical allusion drawn from the pagan authors. I shall see you both, no doubt, at evensong.
I think I will have a stroll with you. I find I do have a headache after all. I think a walk might do it some good.
With pleasure, Miss Prism, with pleasure. We might go as far as the schools and back.
That might be indeed delightful. Cecily, you will read your political economy in my absence. The chapter on the fall of the rupee you may omit. It is somewhat too sensational. Even these metallic problems have their melodramatic side.
It's quite
Horrid political economy, horrid geography, horrid German. Oh.
Miss Ernest Worthing has just driven up from the station. She has brought her luggage with her.
Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany, West. Uncle Jack's sister. Did you tell her Mr. Worthing was in town?
Yes, miss. She seemed very much disappointed. I told her you and Miss Prism were here in the garden. She seemed very anxious to speak to you alone for a moment.
Ask Ernest Worthing to come out here. And I suppose you had better talk to the housekeeper about a room for her.
Yes, miss.
I have never met any truly wicked person before. I feel rather frightened. I'm so afraid she will look just like everyone else. Oh, she does.
You are my little cousin Cecily, I'm sure.
Yeah, you are under some strange mistake. I am not little. In fact, I believe I am more than usually tall for my age. But I am your cousin Cecily. You, I see from your card, are Uncle Jack's sister, my cousin Ernest, my wicked cousin Ernest.
Oh, I'm not really wicked, cousin Cecily. You mustn't think that I am wicked.
If you are not, then you have certainly been deceiving us all in a most inexcusable manner. I hope you have not been leading a double life, pretending to be wicked and being really good all this time. That would be hypocrisy.
I suppose I have been a little reckless?
Oh, I'm glad to hear it.
In fact, now that you mention it, I have been very bad. In my own small way.
I don't think you should be so proud of that. But I'm sure it must have been very pleasant.
It is much pleasanter being here with you.
Oh, I can't see to your being here at all. Uncle won't be back till Monday afternoon.
That is a great, disappointment. I'm obliged to go up by the first train on Monday morning. I have a business engagement I am anxious to miss.
Couldn't you miss it anywhere but London?
No, the appointment is in London.
Well, I know, of course, how important it is not to keep a business engagement, especially if one wants to retain any sense of beauty in life. But I still think you had better wait for Uncle Jack to arrive. I know he wants to talk to you about your emigrating.
About my what?
You're emigrating. He's gone into town to buy your outfit.
I certainly wouldn't let Jack buy my outfit. He has no taste in neckties at all.
I don't think you will require neckties. Uncle is sending you to Australia.
Australia? I'd sooner die.
Well, he said at dinner Wednesday night you'd have to choose between this world, the next world, and Australia.
Well, the accounts I have received of Australia and the next world are not particularly encouraging. This world is good enough for me, Cousin Cecily.
Oh, yes. But are you good enough for it?
Oh, I'm afraid I'm not that. That is why I want you to reform me. You might make it your mission, if you don't mind, Cousin Cecily.
I'm afraid I've no time this afternoon.
Very well. Would you mind my reforming myself this afternoon?
It's rather quixotic of you, but I think you should try.
Well, I'm feeling better already.
Oh, you're looking a little worse.
Oh. That is because I am hungry.
How thoughtless of me. I should have remembered that when one is going to lead an entirely new life, one requires regular and wholesome meals. Won't you come in?
Oh, thank you. Might I have a buttonhole first? I never have any appetite unless I have a buttonhole first.
A marchonier?
No, I'd sooner have a pink rose.
Why?
Because you are like a pink rose, Cousin Cecily.
I don't think it can be right for you to talk to me like that. Miss Prism never says such things to me.
Miss Prism is a short-sighted old lady. You are the prettiest girl I ever saw.
Miss Prism says all good looks are a snare.
They are a snare every sensible person should like to be caught in.
I don't think I would like to catch a sensible person. I shouldn't know what to talk to them about.
You are too much alone, Dr. Chasuble. You should get married. A misanthrope I can understand. A womanthrope, never.
Believe me, I do not deserve so neologistic a phrase. The precept as well as the practice of the primitive church was distinctly against matrimony.
That is obviously the reason why the primitive church has not lasted up to the present day. But you do not seem to realize, dear doctor, that by persistently remaining single, a man converts himself into a permanent public temptation. Men should be more careful. Oh, this very celibacy leads weaker vessels astray.
But is a man not equally attractive when married?
Oh, no married man is ever attractive, except to his wife.
And often I've been told not even to her.
Well, that depends upon the intellectual sympathies of the woman. Maturity can always be depended on. Ripeness can be trusted. Young women are green. Oh, I spoke horticulturally. My metaphor was drawn from fruits. But where is Cecily?
Perhaps she followed us to the schools.
for you till Monday afternoon.
I've arrived sooner than I expected. Oh, Dr. Chasuble, I hope you're well.
Mr. Worthing, I trust this garb of woe does not betoken some terrible calamity.
My sibling.
More dreadful debts and extravagance.
Still leading a life of pleasure.
Dead.
Dead? Your sibling Ernest dead?
Quite dead.
What a lesson for him. I trust he will profit by it.
Mr. Worthing, I offer you my sincere condolence. You at least have the consolation of knowing that you are always the most generous and forgiving of brothers.
Poor Ernest. They had many faults, but this is a sad, sad blow. Whoa.
Very sad indeed. Were you with them at the end?
No, they died abroad, in Paris, in fact. I had a telegram sent to me from the manager at the Grand Hotel.
Was the cause of death mentioned?
A severe chill, it seems.
As a man sows, so shall he reap.
Charity, dear Miss Prism, charity. None of us are perfect. I myself am peculiarly susceptible to drafts. Will the interment take place here?
No, they seem to have expressed desire to be buried in Paris.
In Paris? That hardly points to any very serious state of mind at the last. You would no doubt wish me to make some slight allusion to the tragic domestic affliction next Sunday. My sermon on the meaning of the man in the wilderness can be adapted to almost any occasion, joyful or, as in the present case, distressing. I've delivered it at harvest celebrations, christenings, confirmations, on days of humiliation, and festal days. The last time I delivered it was at the cathedral as a charity sermon on behalf of the Society for the Prevention of Discontent Among the Upper Orders. The bishop who was present was much struck by some of the analogies I drew.
That reminds me, Dr. Chasuble, you seem to have mentioned christenings. I suppose you can still christen, all right. I mean, of course. You are so continually christening, aren't you?
Oh, it is, I regret to say, one of the rector's most constant duties in this parish. I've often spoken to the poorer classes on the subject, but they don't seem to know what thrift is.
But is there any particular infant in whom you're interested, Mr. Worthing? Your sibling, I believe, was unmarried, were they not?
Oh, yes.
People who live entirely for pleasure usually are.
But it's not for any infant, dear doctor. I am rather fond of children. No! The fact is, I would like to be christened this afternoon, if you've nothing better to do.
Mr. Worthing, surely you've been christened already.
I don't remember anything about it.
But have you any grave doubts on the subject?
Oh, I certainly intend to have. Of course, I don't know if the thing would bother you at all, or if you think I'm a little too old now.
No, not at all. The sprinkling, or indeed the immersion of adults is a perfectly canonical practice.
Immersion?
Oh, you need have no apprehensions. A sprinkling is all that is necessary, or indeed, I think, advisable, whether so changeable. At what hour would you wish the ceremony performed?
Oh, I might trot around about 5, if that would suit you.
Perfectly, perfectly. In fact, I have 2 similar ceremonies to perform at that same time. A case of twins, which occurred recently in one of the outlying cottages on your own estate. Poor Jenkins, the carter. Most hardworking man.
No, I don't see much fun in being christened along with other babies. That would be childish. Would 5:30 do?
Admirably. Admirably. And now, dear Mr. Worthing, I shall intrude no longer into a house of sorrow.
Oh, yeah.
I only beg of you not to be too much bowed down by grief. What seem to us bitter trials are often blessings in disguise.
Well, this would seem to me a blessing of an extremely obvious kind.
Uncle Jack! Oh, I'm so pleased to see you back! But what horrid clothes you have on. Do go and change them.
Cecily!
My child!
What's the matter, Uncle Jack? Do look happy. You look as if you've got a toothache, and I have the most wonderful surprise for you. Who do you think is in the dining room? Your sister.
Who?
Your sister, Earnest. She arrived about half an hour ago.
What nonsense! I haven't got a sister.
Oh, don't say that. However badly she may have behaved to you in the past, she is still your sister, and you couldn't be so heartless as to disown her. I'll tell her to come out here, and you'll shake hands with her. Won't you, Uncle Jack?
These are very joyful tidings.
After we had all been resigned to her loss, her sudden return seems to me peculiarly distressing.
My sister's in the dining room? I don't know what it all means. I think it's perfectly absurd. Good heavens! chance.
Brother John, I've come down from town to tell you how terribly sorry I am for all the trouble I have put you to, and that I intend to lead a better life in future.
Uncle Jack, surely you are not going to refuse your own sister's hand.
Nothing will induce me to take her hand. I think her coming here disgraceful. She knows perfectly well why.
Uncle Jack, do be nice. There is some good in everyone. Ernest has just been telling me all about her poor invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury, whom she goes to visit so often. And surely there must be much good in one who is kind to an invalid and leaves the pleasures of a London life to sit by a bed of pain.
She's been talking about Bunbury, has she?
Yes, she's told me all about poor Mr. Bunbury and his terrible state of health.
Bunbury! Well, I won't have her talking to you about Bunbury or anything else. It's enough to drive one perfectly frantic.
Of course, I admit the faults were all on my side. All the same, I find Brother John's coldness to me peculiarly painful. I expected a more enthusiastic welcome, especially considering it is the first time I have come here.
Uncle Jack, if you don't shake hands with Ernest, I will never forgive you.
Never forgive me?
Never, never, never.
Well, this is the last time I shall ever do it.
It's pleasant, is it not, to see so perfect a reconciliation? I think we might leave the two together.
Cecily, you will come with us.
Certainly, Miss Prism, my little task of reconciliation is over.
You've done a beautiful action today, dear child.
We must not be premature in our judgments.
I feel very happy.
You young scoundrel, Algie! You've got to get out of here as soon as possible. I don't allow any Bunburying here.
I have placed Miss Ernest's things in the room next to yours, sir. I trust that is all right.
What?
Miss Ernest's luggage. I have unpacked it and placed it in the room next to your own.
Her luggage?
Yes, sir. 3 portmanteaus, a dressing case, 2 hat boxes, and a large luncheon basket.
I'm afraid I can't stay more than a week this time.
Merriman, order the dog cart at once. Miss Earnest has suddenly been called back to town.
Yes, sir.
What a fearful liar you are, Jack. I've not been called back to town at all.
Yes, you have.
I didn't hear anyone call me.
Your duty calls you back.
My duty has never interfered with my pleasure in the slightest degree.
I can quite understand that.
Well, Cecily is a darling.
You are not to talk of Miss Cardew like that. I don't like it.
Well, I don't like your clothes. You look perfectly ridiculous. Why on earth don't you go and change? It's perfectly childish to be in deep mourning for someone who's actually staying in your house for a whole week as a guest. I call it grotesque.
You are certainly not staying with me for a whole week as a guest or anything else. You've got to leave by the 4:05 train.
Oh, well, I certainly won't leave you so long as you're in mourning. It would be terribly unfriendly of me. Why, you would stay with me if I was in mourning, I expect. I should think it very unkind if you didn't.
Well, will you go if I change my clothes?
Yes, if you're not too long. I never saw anybody take so long to get dressed. It was such little result.
Well, it's better than being as always overdressed as you are.
If I am occasionally a little overdressed, I make up for it by always being immensely overeducated.
Your vanity is ridiculous, your conduct an outrage, and your presence in my garden utterly absurd. However, you've got to catch the 4:05, and I wish you a pleasant journey back to town. This Bunburying, as you call it, has not been a great success for you.
Well, I think it has been a great success. I mean, I am in love with Cecily. And that is everything. before I go and make arrangements for another Bunbury. There she is.
Oh, I merely came back to water the roses. I thought you were with Uncle Jack.
He's gone to order the dog cart for me.
Oh, is he going to take you on a nice drive?
He's going to send me away.
Then have we got to part?
I'm afraid so. It is a very painful parting.
It is always very painful to part from people whom one has known for a very brief space of time. The absence of old friends one can endure with equanimity, but even a momentary separation from one to whom one has just been introduced is almost unbearable.
Thank you.
The dog cart is at the door, miss.
It can wait, Merriman, for 5 minutes.
Yes, miss.
Cecily, I hope I do not offend you if I state quite frankly and openly that you seem to me to be the visible personification of absolute perfection.
Oh, I think your frankness does you great credit, Ernest. If you will allow me, I will copy your remarks into my diary.
Do you really keep a diary? I'd give anything to see it, may I?
No! You see, it is simply a very young girl's recollection of her own thoughts and impressions, and consequently meant for publication. When it appears in volume form, I hope you will order a copy. But pray, Ernest, don't stop. I delight in taking down from dictation. I have reached absolute perfection. You can go on, I'm ready for more. Oh, don't cough, Ernest. When one is dictating, one should speak fluently and not cough. Besides, I don't know how to spell a cough.
Cecily.
Yes.
Ever since I first looked upon your wonderful and incomparable beauty, I have dared to love you wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
I don't think you should say you love me wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't seem to make much sense, does it?
Cecily.
The dog cart is waiting, miss!
Tell it to come back next week at the same hour.
Yes, miss!
Uncle Jack would be very annoyed if he knew you were staying on till next week at this same hour.
Oh, I don't care about Jack. I don't care about anybody in the whole world but you. I love you, Cecily. You will marry me, won't you?
Why, you dear romantic girl, of course. Why, we have been engaged for the last 3 months.
For the last 3 months?
Yes, it will be exactly 3 months on Thursday.
Engaged.
Oh, well, ever since Uncle Jack confessed to us that he had a younger sibling who was very wicked and bad, you of course have formed the chief topic of conversation between myself and Miss Prism. And of course, someone who is much talked about is always very attractive. One feels there must be something to them after all. I dare say it was foolish of me, but I fell in love with you, Ernest.
Darling. And when was the engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of February last. Worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, I determined to end the matter with myself one way or another, and after quite the long struggle, I accepted you under this dear old oak tree. The next day, I went out and bought this little ring in your name and this bangle with a lover's knot I promised you to always wear.
Did I give you this? It's very pretty, isn't it?
Yes, you've wonderfully good taste, darling. It's the excuse I always give for your leading such a bad life. And in this box are all the letters you have written me.
My letters! But my own sweet Cecily, I've never written you any letters.
You need hardly remind me of that, Ernest. I remember only too well I was forced to write your letters for you. I wrote always 3 times a week and sometimes oftener.
Oh, do let me read them, Cecily.
I couldn't possibly. They would make you far too conceited. Why, the 3 you wrote me after we had broken off our engagement are so beautiful and so badly spelled that even now I can hardly read them without crying a little.
But was our engagement ever broken off?
Of course it was. On the 22nd of last March. You can see the entry if you like. I have broken off my engagement with Earnest. I feel it is better to do so. The weather still continues charming.
Why on earth did you break it off? What had I done? I had done nothing. Cecily, I'm very much hurt to hear you broke it off, particularly when the weather was so charming.
Well, it would hardly have been a very serious engagement if it hadn't been broken off at least once. But I forgave you before the week was out.
What a perfect angel you are, Cecily.
Oh, you dear romantic girl. Oh, I hope your hair curls naturally, does it?
Yes, dear, with a little help from others.
Oh, I'm so glad.
You'll never break off our engagement again, will you, Cecily?
Oh, I couldn't break it off now that we've actually met. And besides, there's the question of your name.
Yes, of course.
Now, you mustn't laugh at me, darling, but it has always been a girlish dream of mine to love someone by the name of Earnest. There is something about that name that seems to inspire absolute confidence. I pity any poor woman whose spouse is not called Earnest.
But, my dear child, you can't mean to say that I could not love you if I had some other name.
But what name?
Oh, any name you like. Algernon, for instance.
I don't like the name of Algernon.
Well, my own sweet, loving little darling, I really don't see what offense you could take at the name of Algernon. It's not such a bad name. It's rather an aristocratic sort of name. Half the chaps who get into the bankruptcy court are called Algernon. But seriously, Cecily, if my name was Algie, couldn't you love me?
I might respect you, Ernest, and I might admire your character, but I fear I should not be able to give you my undivided attention.
Cecily.
Yes.
Your rector here is well-versed in all the rites and practices of the church.
Oh, yes. Dr. Chosbull is a most learned man. He has never written a single book, so you can guess how much he knows.
I must see you once on a most important business.
Well,
I shan't be away more than half an hour.
considering that we have been engaged since February the 14th, and that we have only met today for the first time, I think it rather hard that you should leave me for so long a period as half an hour. Couldn't you make it 20 minutes?
I'll be back as soon as I can.
Okay. What an impetuous girl she is. I like her hair so much. I must enter her proposal into my diary.
Miss Fairfax has just called to see Mr. Worthing on very important business, Miss Fairfax says.
Isn't Mr. Worthing in his library?
Mr. Worthing went down in the direction of the rectory some time ago.
Ask the lady to come out here. Mr. Worthing is sure to be back soon. Oh, and you can bring tea.
Yes, miss.
Miss Fairfax. Probably one of the many elderly women associated with Uncle Jack in some philanthropic work in London. I don't like women who do philanthropic work. It seems very forward of them.
Miss Fairfax?
Pray allow me to introduce my name. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew. Oh, what a very sweet name. Something tells me we are going to be great friends. I like you already, more than I can say. My first impressions of people are never wrong.
How nice of you to like me so much after we've known each other for such a comparatively short amount of time. Pray sit down.
I may call you Cecily, may I not?
With pleasure.
And you will always call me Gwendolyn, won't you?
If you wish.
Then that is all quite settled, is it not?
I hope so.
I suppose this might be a favorable opportunity for my mentioning who I am. My father is Lord Bracknell. You have heard of Papa, I suppose?
I don't think so.
Outside the family circle, Papa, I am glad to say, is entirely unknown. I think that is quite as it should be. The home seems to me to be the proper sphere for the man. And certainly once a man begins to neglect his domestic duty, he becomes painfully effeminate, does he not? And I don't like that. It makes men so very attractive. Cecily, Mama, whose views on education are remarkably strict, has brought me up to be extremely short-sighted. It is part of her system. So, do you mind my looking at you through my glasses?
Oh, not at all, Gwendolyn. I am very fond of being looked at.
You are here on a short visit, I suppose.
Oh, no, I live here.
Really? Your mother, no doubt, or some female relative of advanced years, resides here also.
Oh, no, I have no mother, nor in fact any relations.
Indeed.
No, my dear guardian, along with Miss Prism, has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I'm Mr. Worthingsward.
Oh, it is strange. He never mentioned to me that he had a ward. How secretive of him. He grows more interesting hourly. I am not sure, however, that the news inspires me with feelings of unmixed delight. I'm very fond of you, Cecily. I've liked you ever since I met you. But I'm bound to state that now that I know that you are Mr. Worthing's ward, I cannot help expressing a wish you were, well, just a little bit older than you seem to be, and not quite so very alluring in appearance. In fact, if I may speak candidly...
Oh, please do. I think that whenever anyone has anything unpleasant to say, they should always be quite candid.
Well, to speak with perfect candor, Cecily, I wish that you were fully 42, and more than usually plain for your age. Ernest has a strong, upright nature. He is the very soul of truth and honor, and disloyalty would be as impossible to him as deception. But even men of the noblest possible moral character are extremely susceptible to the influence of the physical charms of others. Modern, no less than ancient history, supplies us with many most painful examples of what I refer to. If it were not so, indeed history would be quite unreadable.
I beg your pardon, Gwendolyn. Did you say Ernest?
Yes.
Oh, but it is not Ernest Worthing who is my guardian. It is her brother, her elder brother.
Ernest never mentioned to me that he had a brother.
I am sad to say they have not been on good terms for a long time.
Oh, that accounts for it. And now that I think of it, I have never heard any man mention his brother, and the subject seems distasteful to most men. Oh, Cecily, you have lifted a load from my mind. I was growing almost anxious. It would have been terrible if any cloud had come across a friendship like ours, would it not? Of course, you are quite sure that it is not Ernest Worthing who is your guardian.
Quite sure. In fact, I am going to be hers.
I beg your pardon.
Dearest Gwendolyn, I can see no reason why I should make a secret of it to you. Why our little county newspaper is sure to chronicle the fact next week. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
My darling Cecily, I feel there is some slight error. Ernest Worthing is engaged to me. The announcement will appear in the Morning Post on Saturday at the latest.
There must be some mistake. Miss Fairfax, you see, Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
It is certainly very curious, for he asked me to be his wife yesterday afternoon at 5:30. If you would care to know. Pray do so. I never travel without my diary. One must always have something sensational to read in the train. I am so sorry, dear Cecily, if it is any disappointment to you, but I'm afraid I have the prior claim.
It would distress me more than I can think, Miss Fairfax, if it caused you any mental or physical anguish. But I feel bound to point out that since Ernest proposed to you, she has clearly changed her mind.
If the poor fellow has been entrapped into any foolish promise, I shall consider it my duty to rescue him at once, and with a firm hand.
Whatever entanglement my dear girl may have gotten herself into, I will never reproach her with it after we are married.
Do you allude to me, Miss Cardew, as an entanglement? You are presumptuous. On an occasion of this kind, it becomes more than a moral duty to speak one's mind. It becomes a pleasure.
Do you suggest, Miss Fairfax, that I entrapped Ernest into an engagement? How dare you? No, this is no time for wearing the shallow mask of manners. When I see a spade, I call it a spade!
I am glad to say that I have never seen a spade. It is obvious our social spheres have been widely different.
Shall I lay tea here as usual, miss?
Yes, as usual.
Are there many interesting walks in the vicinity, Miss Cardew?
A great many, Miss Fairfax. From the top of one of the hills quite close, one can see 5 counties.
5 counties! I don't think I should like that. I hate crowds.
I suppose that's why you live in town.
Quite a will. Quite a well-kept garden this is, Miss Cardew.
So glad you like it, Miss Fairfax.
I had no idea there were any flowers in the country.
Oh, flowers are as common in the country, Miss Fairfax, as people are in London.
I don't know how anyone manages to exist in the country. If anyone who is anyone does. The country always bores me to death.
Oh, that is called the agricultural depression, is it not? I believe the aristocracy are suffering from it very much at present. It is quite an epidemic amongst them, I've been told. May I offer you tea, Miss Fairfax?
Detestable girl, but I require tea.
Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar is not fashionable anymore.
not go.
From the moment I saw you, I distrusted you. I felt you were false and deceitful. I am never deceived in such matters. My first impressions of people are invariably right.
It seems to me, Miss Fairfax, that we are trespassing on your valuable time. No doubt you have many other calls of a similar nature to make in the vicinity.
My own Ernest.
Gwendolyn, darling.
A moment. May I ask if you are engaged to be married to this young lady?
To do little Cecily? Of course not. What could have gotten such an idea in your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I knew there must have been some mistake, Miss Fairfax. The gentleman whose arm is at present around you is my dear guardian, John Worthing.
I beg your pardon.
This is Uncle Jack.
Jack!
Oh, this is Ernest.
My own love.
One moment, Ernest. May I ask you, are you engaged to be married to this young woman?
To what young woman? Good heavens, Gwendolyn.
Yes, to good heavens, but that one.
No. What on earth could have put such an idea in your pretty little head?
Thank you, you may.
I thought there was some slight error, Miss Cardew.
Shut up.
The woman who is currently embracing you is my cousin, Miss Algernon Moncrief.
Are you called Algernon?
I cannot deny it.
Oh!
Is your name really?
I could deny it if I liked. I could deny anything if I liked. But yes, my name certainly is John. It's been John for years.
A gross deception has been practiced on both of us.
My poor wounded Cecily.
My sweet wronged Gwendolyn.
You will call me sister, will you not?
There is just one question I should like to be allowed to ask my guardian.
An excellent point, Mr. Worthing. There is just one question I would like to be permitted to put to you. Where is your sibling Ernest? We are both engaged to be married to your sibling Ernest, so it is a matter of some importance to us to know where your sibling Ernest is at present.
Gwendolyn, Cecily, it is very painful for me to be forced to speak the truth. It's the first time I've ever been reduced to such a painful position, and I'm really quite inexperienced in doing anything of the kind. However, I will tell you both, frankly, that I have no sibling Ernest. I have no sibling at all. I've never had a sibling in my life, and I've not the smallest intention of having one in the future.
No sibling at all?
None.
Oh.
Have you never had a sibling of any kind?
Never. Not even of any kind.
I'm afraid it is quite clear, Cecily, that neither of us is engaged to be married to anyone.
It is not a very pleasant position for a young girl to suddenly find herself in, is it?
Let us go into the house. They will hardly venture to come after us there.
No, they are so cowardly, aren't they? No!
This ghastly state of things is what you call Bunburying, I suppose.
Yes. And a wonderful Bunbury it is too. The most wonderful Bunbury I've ever had in my life.
Well, you've no right whatsoever to Bunbury here.
Oh, that is absurd. One has a perfect right to Bunbury anywhere one chooses. Every serious Bunburyist knows that.
Serious Bunburyist? Good heavens!
Well, one has to be serious about something if one is going to have any amusement in life. I happen to be serious about Bunburying. What on earth you were serious about, I haven't the faintest idea. About everything, I expect. You have such an absolutely trivial nature.
Well, the only small satisfaction I have in this whole wretched business is that your friend Bunbury is quite exploded. You won't be able to come down to the country nearly as often as you used to, dear Algie, and a very good thing, too.
Your sibling is a little off color, aren't they, dear Jack? You won't be able to disappear to the country quite so often as your wicked custom was. And not a bad thing, either.
As for your conduct toward Miss Cardew, I must say, your taking in a sweet, simple, innocent girl like that is quite inexcusable. To say nothing of the fact that she is my ward.
I can see no possible defense at all for your deceiving a bright, clever, thoroughly experienced young woman like Miss Fairfax. To say nothing of the fact that she is my cousin.
I wanted to be engaged to Gwendolyn, that's all. I love her.
Well, I simply wanted to be engaged to Cecily. I adore her.
There is certainly no chance of your marrying Miss Cardew.
I see very little likelihood, Jack, of you and Miss Fairfax ever being united.
Well, that's no business of yours.
If it was my business, I wouldn't talk about it. It's very vulgar to talk about one's own business. Only people like stockbrokers do that, and then merely at dinner parties.
How you can sit there, calmly eating muffins, when we're in this horrible trouble, I can't make out. You seem to be perfectly heartless.
I can't eat muffins in an agitated manner. The butter would get in my cuffs. One should always eat muffins quite calmly. It is the only way to eat them.
I say it's perfectly heartless you're eating muffins at all, under the circumstances.
When I am in trouble, eating is the only thing that consoles me. Indeed, when I am in very great trouble, as anyone who knows me intimately can tell you, I refuse everything except food and drink. At present, I am eating muffins because I am unhappy. Besides, I am particularly fond of muffins.
Well, there's no reason why you should eat them all in that greedy way.
I wish you'd have tea cake. I don't like tea cake.
Good heavens, I suppose a man made his own muffins in his own garden.
But you just said it was perfectly heartless to eat muffins.
I said it was perfectly heartless of you. Under the circumstances. That's a very different thing.
That may be, but the muffins are the same.
Algie, I wish to goodness you would go.
You can't possibly ask me to leave without having my dinner. It's absurd. I never go without my dinner. Nobody does except vegetarians and people like that. Besides, I have just made arrangements with Dr. Chasuble to be christened at 6:15 under the name of Earnest.
My dear friend, the sooner you give up that nonsense, the better. I made arrangements this morning with Dr. Chasuble to be christened at 5:30, and I naturally will take the name of Earnest. We can't both be christened Earnest. It's absurd. Besides, I have a perfect right to be christened if I like. There's no evidence that I was ever christened by anybody, and I should think it probable that I never was. And so does Dr. Chasuble. It's entirely different in your case. You've been christened already.
Yes, but I haven't been christened in years.
Yes, but you have been christened. That's the important thing.
Quite so I know my constitution can take it. If you are not sure about your ever having been christened, I must say I think it dangerous you're venturing in it now. Could serve to make you unwell. You could hardly forget that someone very closely connected to you was very nearly carried off this week in Paris by a severe chill.
Yes, but you said a severe chill wasn't hereditary.
It used to be, I know, but I dare say it is now. Science is always making wonderful improvements in things.
That's nonsense. You never talk anything but nonsense.
Jack, you are at the muffins again! I told you I was particularly fond of muffins. There are only 2 left.
But I hate tea cake.
Why on earth do you allow tea cake to be served up to your guests? What ideas do you have of hospitality?
Algernon, I have already asked you to go. I don't want you here. Why don't you just go?
I haven't finished my tea yet, and there's still 1 muffin left.
Ugh.
show they have some sense of shame left.
They have been eating muffins. That looks like repentance. Oh.
They don't seem to notice us at all. Couldn't you cough? I haven't a cough. They're looking at us. What effrontery.
They're approaching. That seems very forward.
Let us preserve a dignified silence.
Certainly, it's the only thing to do now.
Ooga chaka, ooga, ooga, ooga chaka, ooga, ooga.
I can't fight this feeling.
This dignified silence seems to produce an unpleasant effect.
A most distasteful one.
But we will not be the first to speak.
Certainly not.
What you do to me.
Mr. Worthing! I have something very particular to ask you. Much depends on your reply.
Gwendolyn, your common sense is invaluable. Miss Moncrief, kindly answer me the following question. Why did you pretend to be my guardian sister?
In order that I might have the opportunity of meeting you.
That certainly seems a most satisfactory explanation, does it not?
Yes, dear, if you can believe her.
Oh, I don't. But that doesn't change the wonderful beauty of her answer.
True. In matters of grave importance, style, not sincerity, is the vital thing. Mr. Worthing, what explanation can you offer me for pretending to have had a sibling? Was it in order that you might have an opportunity of coming up to town to see me as often as possible?
Can you doubt it, Miss Fairfax?
I have the gravest doubts upon the subject, but I intend to crush them. This is not the moment for German skepticism.
I am more than content with what Miss Moncrief has said. Her voice alone inspires one to absolute credulity.
So you think we should forgive them?
Yes. I mean, no.
True! There are principles at stake that one cannot surrender. Which of us should tell them? The task is not a pleasant one.
Could we not both speak at the same time?
An excellent idea. I nearly always speak at the same time as other people. Will you take the time from me?
Certainly.
Your Christian names are still an insuperable barrier.
That is all.
Our Christian names, is that all? But we're going to be christened this afternoon. We got that. Yeah, we did it.
For my sake, are you prepared to do this terrible thing?
I am.
To please me, are you ready to face this fearful ordeal?
I am.
Where questions of self-sacrifice are concerned, these two are infinitely beyond us.
We are.
They have moments of physical courage of which we know absolutely nothing.
Darling.
You're in trouble.
Lady Bracknell.
Good heavens!
Gwendolyn, what does this mean?
Merely that I am engaged to be married to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Come here. Sit down. Sit down immediately. Hesitation of any kind is a sign of mental decay in the young. Physical weakness in the old. Apprised, sir, of my daughter's sudden flight by her trusty maid, whose confidence I purchased by means of a small coin, I followed her at once by a luggage train. Her unhappy father is, I'm glad to say, under the impression that she is at a more than usually lengthy lecture by the University Extension Scheme on the influence of a permanent income on thought. I do not propose to undeceive him. Indeed, I have never undeceived him on any question. I would consider it wrong. But of course, you will clearly understand that all communication between yourself and my daughter must cease immediately from this moment. On this point, as indeed on all points, I am firm.
I am engaged to be married to Gwendolyn, Lady Bracknell.
You are nothing of the kind, sir.
Ah, shoot.
And now let's regard Algernon. Algernon!
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
May I ask ask if it is in this house that your invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury, resides?
Bunbury doesn't live here. Bunbury is somewhere else at present. In fact, Bunbury is dead.
Dead? When did Mr. Bunbury die? His death must have been extremely sudden.
I killed Bunbury this afternoon. I mean, Bunbury died this afternoon.
What did he die of?
Bunbury, he was quite exploded.
Exploded? Was he the victim of a revolutionary outrage? I was unaware that Mr. Bunbury had any interest in social legislation. If so, then he is well punished for his morbidity.
My dear Aunt Augusta, I mean, he was found out. Bunbury's doctors found that he couldn't live, and so Bunbury died.
He seems to have had a great confidence in the opinion of his physicians. I am glad, however, that he made up his mind at the last to some definite course of action and acted under proper medical advice. And now that we are finally rid of this Mr. Bunbury, may I ask, Mr. Worthing, who is this young person whose hand my niece Algernon is now holding in what seems to me a peculiarly unnecessary manner?
That lady is Miss Cecily Cardew, my ward.
I am engaged to Cecily, Aunt Augusta.
I beg your pardon.
Miss Moncrief and I are engaged to be married, Lady Bracknell.
I do not know if there is anything peculiarly exciting in the air in this particular part of Hertfordshire, but the number of engagements that go on seems to me considerably above the proper average that statistics has laid down for our guidance. I think some preliminary inquiry on my part would not be out of place. Mr. Worthing, is Miss Cardew at all connected with any of the larger railway stations in London? I merely desire information. Until yesterday, I was unaware that there were any families or persons whose origin was a terminus.
Miss Cardew is the granddaughter of the late Mr. Thomas Cardew of 149 Belgrave Square Southwest, Gervase Park, Dorking, Surrey, and the Sporran, Fifeshire, North Britain.
That sounds not unsatisfactory. The addresses always inspire confidence, even in tradesmen. But what proof have I of their authenticity?
I have carefully preserved the court guides of the period. They're open to your inspection, Lady Bracknell.
I have known strange errors in that publication.
Miss Cardew's family solicitors are Messrs. Markby, and Markby.
Markby, and Markby? A firm of the very highest position in their profession. Indeed, I have been told that one of the Mr. Markbys is occasionally seen at dinner parties. So far, I am satisfied.
That is extremely kind of you, Lady Bracknell. I also have in my possession, you'll be pleased to hear, certificates of Miss Cardew's birth, baptism, whooping cough, registration, vaccination, confirmation, and the measles, both in the German and the English variety.
A life crowded with incident, I see. Although perhaps too exciting for such a young girl. I am not myself in favor of premature experiences. The time approaches for our departure. We have not a moment to lose. As a matter of form, Mr. Worthing, I'd better ask you if Miss Cardew has any little fortune.
About 130,000 pounds in the funds. That's all. Goodbye, Lady Bracknell. So pleased to have seen you.
A moment, Mr. Worthing. 130,000 pounds and in the funds. Well, Miss Cardew seems a most attractive young lady. Now that I look at her. Few girls of our age have any really solid qualities, any qualities that last and improve with time. We live, I regret to say, in an age of surfaces. Come over here, dear. Pretty child. Your dress is sadly simple, and your hair looks almost as nature might have left it. But we can soon alter all of that. A thoroughly experienced French maid produces a really marvelous result in a very brief space of time. I remember recommending one to Lady Lansing, and after 3 months, her own husband did not know her.
And after 6 months, nobody knew her. Right? Because she's...
No. The side view is what I want.
Oh. Yes.
Quite as I expected. There are distinct social possibilities in your profile. The two weak points of our age are its want of principle and its want of profile. The chin a little higher, dear. Style largely depends on the way the chin is worn, and they are worn very high, just at present. Algernon,
Oh, yes, Aunt Augusta.
there are distinct social possibilities in Miss Cardew's profile.
Cecily is the sweetest, dearest, prettiest girl in the entire world, and I don't care tuppence about social possibilities.
Never speak disrespectfully of society, Algernon. Only people who can't get into it do that. Dear child, of course you know that Algernon has nothing but her debts to depend upon. But I do not approve of mercenary marriages. When I married Lord Bracknell, I had no fortune of any kind, but I never dreamed of allowing that to stand in my way. Well, I suppose I must give my consent.
Oh, thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Cecily, you may kiss me.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell.
You may also address me as Aunt Augusta for the future.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
The marriage, I think, had better take place quite soon.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
To speak frankly, I am not in favor of long engagements. They give people the opportunity of learning each other's character before marriage, which I think is never advisable.
Excuse me for interrupting you, Lady Bracknell, but this engagement is entirely out of the question. I am Miss Cardew's guardian, and she cannot marry without my consent until she comes of age. And that consent I absolutely decline to give.
Upon what grounds, may I ask? Algernon is an extremely, I may almost say an ostentatiously eligible young lady. She has nothing, but she looks everything. What more could one desire?
It pains me very much to be forced to speak frankly to you, Lady Bracknell, about your niece, but the fact is that I do not approve of her moral character. I suspect her of being untruthful.
Untruthful? My niece Algernon? Impossible. She is an Oxonian.
I'm afraid there's no possible doubt of the matter. Yesterday afternoon, during my temporary absence in London, on an important quest of romance, she obtained entry to my house by means of false pretense of being my sister. Under an assumed name, she drank, I've just been informed by my butler, an entire pint bottle of Perrier Joyer Brut 89, a wine I was specifically reserving for myself. Continuing her disgraceful deceptions, she succeeded over the course of an afternoon in alienating the affections of my only ward. She subsequently stayed for tea and devoured every single muffin. But what makes her conduct all the more heartless is that she knew from the first that I have no sister, I never had a sister, and I don't intend to have a sister, not even of any kind. I distinctly told her so myself yesterday afternoon.
Mr. Worthing, after careful consideration, I have decided entirely to overlook my niece's conduct to you.
That is very kind of you, Lady Bracknell. My own decision, however, is unalterable. I decline to give my consent.
Come here, sweet child.
You just listen to me, I swear to God.
How old are you, dear?
Well, I am really only 18, but I always admit to 20 when I go to evening parties.
You are quite right in making some slight alteration. Indeed, a woman should never be quite accurate about her age. It seems so calculating. 18, but admitting to 20 at evening parties. Well, it will not be long until you are of age and free from the restraint of tutelage. So I don't think your guardian's consent is, after all, a matter of any importance.
Ha!
Pray excuse me for interrupting you again, Lady Bracknell, but it's only fair that I tell you that according to the terms of her grandfather's will, Miss Cardew does not legally come of age until she is 35.
That does not seem to me a grave objection. 35 is a very attractive age. London society is full of women of the very highest birth who, of their own free choice, have remained 35 for years. Lady Dumbleton is an instance in point. To my knowledge, she has been 35 ever since arriving at the age of 40, which was many years ago now. I see no reason why our dear Cecily should not be even more attractive at the age you mentioned than she is at present. will be a large accumulation of property.
Algie, could you really wait for me till I was 35?
Of course I could, Cecily. You know I could.
Yes, I felt it instinctively. But I couldn't wait all that time. I hate waiting even 5 minutes for anything. It always makes me rather cross. I'm not punctual myself, I know, but I like punctuality in others, and waiting, even to be married, is quite out of the question.
Then what is to be done, Cecily?
I don't know, Miss Moncrief.
My dear Mr. Worthing, as Miss Cardew states positively that she cannot wait until she is 35, a remark which I feel bound to say shows a somewhat impatient nature, I would beg of you to reconsider your decision.
Oh, but my dear Lady Bracknell, the matter is entirely within your hands. The moment you consent to my marriage with Gwendolen, I would happily allow your niece to form an alliance with my ward.
You must know that what you propose is out of the question.
Then a passionate celibacy is all any of us can look forward to.
That's not the destiny I propose for Gwendolen. Algernon, of course, can choose for herself. Come, dear, we have already missed 5, if not 6 trains. To miss any more might expose us to comment on the platform.
Everything is quite ready for the christenings.
The christening, sir? Is not that somewhat premature?
Both these gentlefolk have expressed a desire for immediate baptism.
At their age. The idea is grotesque and irreligious. Algernon, I forbid you to be baptized. I will not hear of such excesses. Lord Bracknell would be highly displeased if he was to learn that that was how you wasted your time and money.
I understand there'll be no christenings at all this afternoon.
I don't think, as things are now, it would be of much practical value to either of us, Dr. Chasuble.
I'm grieved to hear such sentiments from you, Mr. Worthing. They savor of the heretical views of the Anabaptists, views which I have completely refuted in 4 of my unpublished sermons. However, seeing as your mood is somewhat heretical, I will return to the church at once, where I have just been informed that for the last hour and a half, Miss Prism has been waiting for me in the vestry.
Miss Prism? Did I hear you mention a Miss Prism?
Yes, Lady Bracknell, I'm on my way to join her.
Pray allow me to detain you for a moment. This matter may prove of vital importance to Lord Bracknell and myself. Is this Miss Prism a female of repellent aspect, remotely connected with education?
She is the most cultivated of ladies and the very picture of respectability.
It is obviously the same person. May I ask what position she holds in your household?
I am a celibate, madame.
Miss Prism, Lady Bracknell, has been for the last 3 years Miss Cardew's esteemed governess and valued companion.
In spite of what I hear of her, I must see her at once. Let her be sent for.
She approaches. She is nigh.
I was told you were waiting for me in the vestry. Dear Canon, I have been waiting there for you for an hour and 3/4.
Prism! Come here, Prism. Prism, where is that baby? 28 years ago, Prism, you left Lord Bracknell's, number 104, Upper Grosvenor Street, in charge of a perambulator that contained a baby of the male sex. You never returned. A few weeks later, through an elaborate investigation by the Metropolitan Police, the perambulator was discovered at midnight, standing by itself in a remote corner of Bayswater. It contained a manuscript of a 3-volume novel of more than usually revolting sentimentality. But the baby was not there. Prism, where is that baby?
Lady Bracknell, I admit with shame that I do not know. I only wish I did. The plain facts of the case are these. On the morning of the day you mention, a day that is forever branded in my memory, I prepared as usual to take the baby out in its perambulator. I had also with me a somewhat old but capacious handbag, in which I had intended to place the manuscript of a work of fiction that I had completed in my few unoccupied hours. When a moment of mental abstraction for which I never can forgive myself, I deposited the manuscript in the bassinet and placed the baby in the handbag.
But where did you deposit the handbag?
Oh, do not ask me, Mr. Worthing.
Miss Prism, this matter is of no small importance to me. I insist on knowing where you placed the handbag that contained that infant.
I left it in the cloakroom of one of the larger railway stations in London.
What railway station?
Victoria! The Brighton Line.
I must retire to my room for a moment. Gwendolyn, wait here for me.
If you are not too long, I will wait here for you all my life.
What do you think this all means, Lady Bracknell?
I dare not even suspect, Dr. Chasuble. I need hardly tell you that in families of high position, strange coincidences are not supposed to occur. They are hardly considered the thing.
Son of a...
Uncle Jack seems strangely agitated.
Your guardian has a very emotional nature.
This noise is extremely unpleasant. It sounds as if he was having an argument. I dislike arguments of any kind. They are always vulgar and often convincing.
It seems to have stopped now.
I wish he would come to some conclusion.
The suspense is terrible. I hope it will last.
Miss Prism, is this the handbag? Examine it carefully before you speak. The happiness of more than one life depends on your answer.
It seems to be mine. Yes! Here is the injury it received through the upsetting of a Gower Street omnibus in younger and happier days. Oh! And here is the stain on the lining, caused by the explosion of a temperance beverage, an incident that occurred at Leamington. Oh, and here on the lock are my initials. I had forgotten that in a moment of extravagance I had them placed there. Oh, the bag is undoubtedly mine. I am delighted to have it so unexpectedly restored to me. It has been a great inconvenience being without it all these years.
Miss Prism, more to you is restored than just this handbag. I was the baby you placed in it.
You?
Yes, Mother.
Oh, Mr. Worthing, I am unmarried.
Unmarried? I cannot deny that is a serious blow. But after all, who has the right to cast a stone upon one who has suffered? Cannot repentance wipe out an act of folly? Why should there be one law for men and another for women? Mother, I forgive you!
Mr. Worthing, there is some error. There is the lady who can tell you who you really are.
Lady Bracknell, I hate to seem inquisitive, but would you mind telling me who I am?
I'm afraid the news I have to give you may not altogether please you. You are the son of my poor sister, Mrs. Moncrieve, and consequently, Algernon's elder brother.
Algy's elder brother? Then I have a sibling after all. I knew I had a sibling! I always said I had a sibling! Cecily, how could you have ever doubted that I had a sibling? Dr. Chasuble, my unfortunate sister. Miss Prism, my unfortunate sister. Gwendolyn, my unfortunate sister. Algy, you young scoundrel. You'll have to treat me with much more respect in the future. You've never behaved to me as a sister all your life.
Well, not till today, old fellow. I tried, though I was out of practice.
My own. But what own are you? What is your Christian name now that you've become someone else?
Good heavens, I had quite forgotten that point. I suppose your stance on the subject of my name is irrevocable?
I never change, except in my affection.
What a noble nature you have, Gwendolyn.
Then the question had better be cleared up at once. Late Aunt Augusta. At the time Miss Prism placed me in the handbag, had I been christened already?
Every luxury that money could buy, including christening, had been lavished on you by your fond and doting parents.
And I had been christened. That's settled. Now, what name was I given? Let me know the worst.
Being the eldest, you were naturally christened after your father.
Yes, but what was my father's Christian name?
I cannot at the present moment recall the general's Christian name, but I have no doubt he had one. He was an eccentric, I admit, but only in later years, and that was due to the Indian climate and marriage and indigestion and other things of that kind.
Algie, can't you recollect what our father's Christian name was?
My dear fellow, we were never even on speaking terms. He died before I was a year old.
His name would appear in the army lists of the period, I suppose, Aunt Augusta.
The general was a man of peace, except in his domestic life, but I have no doubt his name would be in any military directory.
The army lists of the last 40 years are here! These delightful records should have been my constant study. M generals. Malum, Maxbum, Magley, what ghastly names they all have. Markby, Migsby, Mobbs, Moncrief. Lieutenant 1840, Captain, Lieutenant Colonel, Colonel, General, 1869, Christian name, John, Earnest. Earnest John is what it says. That's what it says. I always said my name was Earnest, didn't I, Gwendolyn? I mean, it naturally is Earnest.
Yes, I remember the general was called Earnest. I knew I had some particular reason for disliking the name.
Ernest! My own Ernest. I felt from the first you could have no other name.
Gwendolyn, it is a terrible thing for a man to realize suddenly that all his life he's been speaking nothing but the truth. Can you forgive me?
I can, for I feel that you are sure to change.
My own one!
Letizia!
Frederick, at last!
Cecily, at last.
Gwendolyn, at last!
My nephew, you seem to be displaying signs of triviality.
On the contrary, Aunt Augusta, I've now realized for the first time in my life the vital importance of being earnest.
We said the title of the play! We said the title of the play. It's very hard to do. We said the title of the play. We did it all for you. We said the title of the play. This is the second verse. We said the title of the play, which we did not rehearse.
Thank you very much for attending this performance of The Importance of Being Earnest. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. If you'd like to see any of our wonderful cast in future projects, we will go down the list of where you can find them.
Hey, come watch me direct Brick by Brick Players, King Lear at Squirrel House Arts, June 22nd through the 25th.
You can see me in some performances of Cabal while that's still going on, or come audition for my Fringe show if you like queered classics. It is a queered version of Dracula.
You can catch me looking for work. Please God, someone hire me.
You can catch me checking in with Ian if he's got any leads, because I also have nothing on my plate.
While you're out and about at Fringe, come back to this very theater to see Slices, dark and demented monologues.
I will be appearing in Norse Play, which is also on this stage, late May, early June.
Until untitled fringe show, either at the Southern or the Mixed Blood, which I am writing and performing.
We hope that you enjoyed the play. Have a safe night. Good luck with getting out of your parking space. We hope to see you again at a future Phoenix performance. Thank you very much.